Hi everyone, I'm Kaius, and in my last video I said I would talk about scrapped characters and the like in another video, and well, this is another video. I don't really have an interesting introduction for this topic, though let me try one out because YouTube tells me that people like it when I make compelling thesis statements. Characters are the bread and butter of a fighting game. Well, besides the actual bread and butter combos, but basically these guys define a game for most people. The way they look, the way they play. The same can be said about pretty much every genre, but since fighting games focus on one-on-one battles most of the time, characters sort of become a player's avatar. But sometimes a character isn't able to make it to the point where players can give them that love. The unfinished, the unplanned, the unreleased, and the unconfirmed existence? I'm gonna tally off a bunch of fighters who fall under these categories. Before I start, I am gonna lay a few ground rules. I won't be including Marvel vs. Capcom or Super Smash Bros. In this video because there's enough of those series to make their own videos, and I admittedly was tempted to include characters who never existed in the first place, such as Shenlong, but after making the segment I decided it would be better as a standalone video about the topic. If you want the cut segment, I will put it up on Patreon as this month's bonus feature. If a character is scrapped only in the form of concept art, they won't get a standalone segment, but halfway through this video I plan on doing a concept art lightning round, where I'll cover as many of these characters as I can think of. I'm gonna miss some for sure, so maybe I'll do a part 2 in the future. Comments make a great jumping point for this kind of research, by the way, so I'd love if you tell me which characters I forgot about. Let's start unveiling these characters, starting with a recent example. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is a game that already has like 8.4 quintillion characters in it, with even more coming soon in the future, including Glorio. Oh, he's so dreamy. Oh, and a bunch of other losers I don't give a shit about. However, there are actually other characters included in the game files who aren't accessible by any normal means. Those being Gohan Black, who appeared in a Sparking episode, and Chi-Chi, who doesn't appear fightable in any form by the looks of things. However, some people found a way to make Chi-Chi completely playable. Using mods, people were able to make Chi-Chi playable, and the wildest part of it is that people were making Sparking episodes using this Chi-Chi, which could be played even if you didn't have mods. So Chi-Chi was just in this weird half-playable state to the entire PC player base. While Chi-Chi is technically playable, she only comes with Goku's moveset and of course lacks her own battle sounds. However, she does come with her own iconic signature abilities from the manga, like None and Raccoon Ultra Fighting Bomber. Of course, when Bandai Namco caught onto this, they released a statement basically saying that people will be exploded into a million tiny pieces if you made one such modded custom battle. Thankfully, this only applies to the custom battle mods. If you want to play Bulma in this game with her own moveset and characters like Salt and everything, it's totally fair game. Speaking of Bulma, she was actually most likely meant to be a playable character all the way back in 2004 with Dragon Ball Budokai 3. And the story behind this rumor mill is crazy. I'll give you the SparkNotes version, but there is a whole Game Sleuth episode made in conjunction with Kanzenshu that elucidates this situation. If you want the full story of Bulma and Budokai 3 in a dedicated video, there's going to be a link to it up there. In 2004, Kanzenshu asked Funimation's Steve Simmons if there were any extra characters fans hadn't found out about yet, and he said that there was a chance of Bulma being in some sort of playable state, but he wasn't sure about it himself. He does have a reason to believe this because she does have a model in the game's training mode, as well as voice clips that reference her.
Bulma versus Bulma!
As well as footage of her English voice actress Tiffany Vilma recording voice lines for Bulma.
Then of course, the toll it takes on your chords is another story. I mean, my character screams for 5 pages at a time.
Yeah! Hiya! Hiya! Ha! Hiya! Get back! Ha!
Just like Kanzenshu's investigation states, it really doesn't make any sort of logical sense to record battle grunts that aren't going to be used. I mean, if I were to record battle grunts like that, I'd like to put them to use somehow. It's just, you know, the screams, they really do a number on your throat, and it's a lot. Get back! Yeah! Anyway, another point supporting Bulma's existence was that there was capsule data for a playable Bulma. Now, you couldn't unlock this capsule by regular means, and forcing the unlock did absolutely nothing. Moving on, let's talk about Tekken. The first Tekken's arcade release has a really peculiar case of an unused character called Wildcard, who was probably meant to be a scrapped random select option of some sort and is used as the empty fighter panel in the character select screen. You can force Wildcard to be selectable, and doing so actually produces a playable yet peculiar result. Wildcard uses Kazuya's P2 model and Yoshimitsu's moveset. Aside from occasionally playing the Good Morning voice clip at seemingly random, Wildcard uses completely original voice clips that otherwise aren't used by anybody in the game. These voice lines are grouped after Kazuya's in the game files, which indicates that this could be a bunch of scrapped voice lines for Kazuya or something. But if you ask me, I think there's a reason to believe that Wildcard was meant to be playable. The character has name cards for both the versus screen and their life bar, though this could just be calling from the name data provided for the character select screen. They even have an announcer call for some reason, which implies it was meant to be selectable by some way.
Wildcard!
Maybe as a random select like I mentioned earlier, but I choose to believe that they were intended as a gameplay concept, one which was later revived in Tekken 3 as Mokujin. While we're talking about Tekken 3, we should really go through the scrapped characters in that game. Jun Kazama appears in the game files as a playable character. Early in Tekken 3's development, the developers were not sure where the story was going to go in terms of which characters were doing what. There's moveset data for Kazuya as well that adds to this, but it's buggy and incomplete outside of a single throw, being Kazuya's hip throw. Jun uses Nina's model and Jin's moveset. She also has her own portraits, and her voice lines from Tekken 2 are present. But you're not here for Jun Kazama, you're here for the fucking fish. Sake was a character who was designed originally to be Kuma's weapon, a giant salmon, and it was going to be featured as a joke mid-boss character too. However, there were problems with this concept, namely that paying money to play a character who would just drop on a deck and flop like a fish would inevitably piss arcade gamers off. Harada noted that the kind of character Sake is might be more acceptable in a console release, but Sake is also absent from this version of the game. Moving to Tekken's sister series Soulcalibur for a brief second, when doing research for this video, a lot of people pointed me towards Edgardo, a would-be Soulcalibur 3 newcomer who was cut due to scheduling issues. Only his model was made, but it was never animated. I wasn't going to include this one because we don't have many pieces of information to go off of, and seemingly no trace of the character exists in the game files, but information of interest to me is that Edgardo, despite being cut, would be mentioned in Soulcalibur 4 and even appeared as a secret opponent in Broken Destiny, though for some reason they still don't use the model they claim exists for him and use a pretty ugly Create-A-Soul prefab instead. While I'm counting characters who never even made it to the game files, I might as well mention this Pokken tournament roster concept supposedly found in the Game Freak Terror League. Notably, a majority of this roster is entirely built up of fighting types, and all of the non-fighting types here actually made it into the final game with the exception of Chespin, who evolves into a fighting type. So I assume the reason all these guys were cut early was to make sure that the roster's types were properly diversified. There's a slot with no image at the far right, but I think that's probably a placeholder for what eventually became Shadow Mewtwo, so I'm not thinking much about it. You know what time it is now? It's fucking Virtua Fighter time! Fuck yes! Peak is back on the menu! The original Virtua Fighter has 4 unused characters in the game files. A military guy called Jeff, who uses Jackie's moveset, an early version of Akira, most likely called Takeru, an unnamed boss character with 3 costumes instead of 2 and Dural's moveset, and perhaps most interestingly, Majido, also known as Siba, who was originally supposed to be a main character before being replaced by Akira due to a supposed low popularity during location tests, most likely due to a lack of signature move. Majid's design and imagery were also used extremely late into development, still even being used on the American arcade cabinet in place of Akira. Majid would later appear under his other name Siba as a playable character in Fighters Megamix. It seems like they addressed his signature move issue as he sports a scimitar in this game to perform unblockable moves at the cost of limited uses. Interestingly, he also uses Ban's moveset from Fighting Vipers. Hello everybody, this is Editor Kaius, everybody's favourite pacebreaker. So, in what I can only imagine is a cosmic fucking prank by the people at Sega, Virtua Fighter 5 Revel released on Steam recently, and in the game files is a PDF file to what is called the Virtua Fighter pre-production secret materials, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a full PDF of just exclusively VF1 pre-production material, concept art, ideas for the story, ideas for the characters. Anyway, I've brought this up because, as you could imagine, this has effectively outmoded a lot of the stuff I said in this video. So that character that I was talking about that was like 3 models, that's actually 3 completely different guys that were all operating under the same general moveset. Their names are Rekka, Score, and Eon, and they're an older brother and a pair of twins who are part of an evil group called the Red Scorpion Society, which is basically like Judgment 6 in the current Virtua Fighter lore, but, you know, more 90s, more Judgment 6-y. They even have Doral here. And the other 3 characters that were in this segment, Majid, Takeru, and Jeffrey, are also part of the Red Scorpion Society. Majid Abdul is the macho man of the Sandstorm, and that's literally all they say about him here. He has nothing else written here. And Jeffrey Bachman is a former soldier who trained Sarah to kill her brother. That thing does happen in Virtua Fighter lore, by the way. Sarah does try to assassinate Jackie. And perhaps most interestingly, Takeru, who I thought was just an Akira prototype, was actually related to Akira. His full name is Takeshi Ryushoji, and he was supposed to be Akira's ex-disciple who was expelled from Akira's martial arts school due to his evil intentions, and he creates his own fighting style called Hasatsuken, which here is written in the document could be called the Evil Baji-Kwan. He's actually just evil Akira. I assume that this concept came out some other way in like Go Hinogami, because he's very, you know, edgy looking and shit. And yes, there are even more characters in this file. I will put up a few of them on screen, and all of the ones who didn't make it on screen right now are going to be put in the concept art section. I'll just have little Walter comments contextualizing these as I put them up on screen. It's all very, very interesting and could not have been timed worse, quite frankly, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's literally everything. Most of the stuff near the bottom of this document is just like screenshots of the old shit. There was going to be a shark in the game. I thought that was interesting. They were going to call it Virtua Fighters, plural. That's everything though. This might be my longest editor case segment yet. Maybe it's just slightly longer than the Street Fighter one I did in that color edit video. Whatever, bye! And speaking of fighting Vipers, there are multiple caricatures of staff members as unused fighters, likely added as an office gag, though these characters crash the game at the beginning of the match unless you use debug mode. The more storied characters hidden in this game are Sonic and Tails from the Sonic series, who were added by a programmer in his spare time as a joke. When Yu Suzuki found out, the hidden characters slowly made their way up Sega until finally reaching Sonic creator and convicted white-collar criminal Yuji Naka, who loved the idea so much that it became fully fleshed out into Sonic the Fighters, which ironically has a Fighting Vipers character as a hidden unused character. Honey the Cat is a Sonic-styled version of Honey from Fighting Vipers. There are also playable versions of Metal Sonic and Dr. Eggman in the game files, and these 3 would all become playable in the PSN and Xbox Live Arcade versions of Sonic the Fighters, with all of their unfinished oddities patched up. Though there were actually even more characters in Sonic the Fighters that were never fully playable, such as Robo Egg, Rocket Metal, and several unused variants of Eggman, including a mechless version and a larger mechless version that was probably meant to be a larger powered up version a la Malar from Fighting Vipers. Perhaps some of these characters were planned for the Saturn port that never really materialized in the end. Talking about characters who were scrapped in one version of a game before being brought back in another in a playable state actually reminds me of Hugo from Street Fighter 3. He debuted in Second Impact, sure, but he was actually supposed to be playable in New Generation, and most of the data for him still exists in NG, albeit there isn't much of it to begin with. Hugo is only capable of doing basic locomotion and parrying. His normals have no animation or hitbox, and for some reason he can just jump infinitely like a goddamn Kirby character. His super arts are listed in-game, but don't match the final names used for them, and perhaps strangest of all, Hugo has this fucking ginormous stun gauge. Though stunning him won't do you much good, as putting Hugo into any hard knockdown state completely crashes the ROM. Okay guys, we're officially at the halfway point, which means it's time for the mandated concept art lightning round! I'm gonna put some concept art on screen with some text beside it, and maybe I'll even verbally comment on a few of them. Whoa. Sick art. Hey, yummers. Check out this one. Sexy. Topic change! Did you know that Orochi Iori and Evil Ryu are playable in Capcom vs SNK 2? They're playable by default in the console releases of the game, but in the arcade version they're for some reason completely locked from being selectable. You can actually play as them if you fiddle with the right memory addresses, and they're completely finished with no bugs or missing assets. The same applies to the training stage and the EX Groove system, though these things are lacking certain features. So it seems like the Dreamcast release's content was pretty much close to done when Capcom pushed out the arcade release. Orochi Iori was also in the data for the King of Fighters 2002 Unlimited match, as he was likely supposed to be added as a hidden character much like the other characters ported over from SVC Chaos. However, this Iori is super unfinished and causes the PS2 version to softlock and other versions of the game to straight up crash. His animations are messed up, but the moves that don't crash the game function as expected, and his colour palettes and sound effects are completely intact from SVC Chaos. So you could theoretically play a full run with this glitched out Iori, though I imagine doing so would be a sensory fucking nightmare. KOF Neowave also has an unused character, that being K49, who was rumoured to have been cut from the KLUB series following worries that SNK might get sued due to the character's resemblance to Tetsuo Shima. Resemblance is, of course, putting it delicately. It's a long story, but basically this was probably a ruse or something according to Crispy Kaiser when KLUB 15 revealed its newcomer Cronin, who I guess I'll defer to my KLUB 15 video essay for this.
And the last new character is Cronin McDougall, who is definitely not K49 from KLUB 2001, has nothing to do with K49 from KLUB 2001, and you should not ask if he's kinda like K49 from KLUB 2001. However, if you were to ask me if he's sorta like K49 from KLUB 2001, I would probably say yes. He has some of the moves from K49 from KLUB 2001, but he's probably maybe definitely not the same character. He's a separate human being, I swear to god. He's nothing like that dude, and he's also nothing like Nemos from O2UM, and definitely absolutely nothing like Tetsuo from Akira. I swear on me mum.
Anyway, K49 is probably just directly ported over from KLUB 2002, seeing as his moveset is mostly intact. But he lacks Neowave's auto combo and has the odd animation or palette oddity here and there. KOF fans have made mods that restore K49 to his full playability, because that's what KOF fans do. But Kaius, you might be wondering, what about Orochi Iori from O2UM? You didn't mention modders re-adding him. Well, they did. I just didn't mention it until now because I am very smart. And now for something completely different. Let's talk about Monster Ancient Klein. Does it really count to add a game that was literally cancelled? Well, yes, because it's my video. Anyway, if you don't know what Monster Ancient Klein was, but you know who this guy, Delga, is... Okay, well, one, I know what you are. Second, Monster Ancient Klein was a sequel to the Dojin fighter made by Sho Kawakami, a character artist who was believed to have worked on character designs for Darkstalkers, particularly that of John Talbane, which explains a lot. This game has two characters who were disabled in the location tests, Isengar Lop Garo and Jeet, and the unplayable boss character from the first game, Ifrit. Despite being a returning character, Ifrit completely lacks any sprites or moves and pretty much only exists through his other visual assets, like his character select and life bar portraits. You'd think he would have sprites, not only because of the original monster having him in it, but also because, well, given he's just a burning version of Rail and Rail is right there. Geo seems to have been completely set aside as a low priority character, since he has no sprites and a very rudimentary moveset with no running normal and only one special that uses Origa's sprites and other assets, beyond his unique voice clips, which are also unused. Isengrin is a puppet character and the most finished of all of the unused characters, though his sprites aren't fully finished. His special moves call on a puppet to attack in specific ways, and they function as intended, though the puppet itself does not have sprites and is completely invisible, meaning you're essentially just guesstimating where a hitbox is going to be. His monster combo has him do one animation, but it also summons a shit ton of copies of him that don't do anything, and causes a bug that for some ungodly fucking reason completely disables Isengrin's ability to walk backwards. Monster Ancient Klein is interesting to me because there's so much that's almost finished that somebody could theoretically clean up a lot of the files and create something of a community edition for the game. Talking of anime fighters, let's move on to something completely different. Persona 4 Arena and its younger sister Ultimax had quite a few scrapped characters, the most notable of which being Ryotaro Dojima and Nanako Dojima, who were both suggested to Atlus by Toshimichi Mori. However, Atlus, being prudes who hate fun, said hell no. Unfortunately, being corner-looked by the Dojima family as Ryotaro throws out some great vegetables at you was completely out of the question. The fact that a Dojima duo isn't even the most interesting scrapped character from these games is crazy, because there are files in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax that insinuate that there was going to be a fourth DLC character released between Toru Adachi and Best Girl Marie, and that character was none other than Joker. Well, P5 Hero to be more specific. There are announcer calls for P5 Hero,
P5 Hero, Persona 5 Hero,
and Mephistopheles,
who
notably was meant to be Joker's persona early in development before being replaced with Arsene to better fit the game's theming. P5 Hero has a particular oddity wherein his files are placed between Adachi and Marie's, however Margaret also ends up taking that spot later in the game's life, using the internal label of NX, which goes against the character labels matching their names. However, NX would match up to a theoretical P5 Hero a lot more if NX meant like, no, Zrotagen. I don't know, it's a long shot. Something I think is worth noting though is that placeholder announcer calls like this are made for a lot of fighting games, particularly for future-proofing. Mori's other Persona adjacent fighting game, BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, notably included announcer calls for literally every character from every franchise that was included in the game's crossover.
Petra Johanna Lagerqvist, Yagyu, Joan Arc, Kaius.
Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl also had a lot of these.
Bebop!
And Multiverses also has entire recorded interactions for characters who haven't been released and, given the direction that game is going, probably never will be.
Bet I could figure out that semblance shit if somebody let me try it out.
Well, Warner Bros. Gives me a good segue here. Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe is an interesting game to look at in terms of scrapped characters because the process of scrapping these characters was purely a side effect of Midway effectively being on life support while making this game, and filing for that good old Chapter 11 bankruptcy. One such character was Quan Chi, who was pretty much expected as he appeared in the story of MKVDC, and he had a render and everything. His model would go on to be used in the 2011 Mortal Kombat reboot. It's also been said that Ed Boon alluded to 3 other characters being added as DLC, Harley Quinn, Doomsday, and Kung Lao respectively. However, I couldn't find any concrete source on this information, so I will choose to take it with a pinch of salt. Or just believe it uncritically, I don't know. Though if you know anything about scrapped MK characters, that's not the one you're here to hear about. You want to hear that groovy, chainsaw revving, Pepe Sylvia-ass complete mess of a DLC license, don't you? Well, I've saved the best for last. We're talking about the Ash Williams rabbit hole, baby. Okay, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to give you the SparkNotes version, because this could be its own video, and quite fucking frankly, it might be in the future. But others have probably talked about it better than me, so I'll just do what I can for now. This timeline is also documented in a handy little Reddit post, so go give this guy Reddit gold or something. We're all kind strangers here. Shortly after Mortal Kombat 11's release, the Switch version of the game was datamined. Ash Williams is pretty explicitly there alongside other DLC characters from both the Combat Pack and Aftermath DLCs. He also has subtitle files for his dialogue, which seems to imply that this is indeed Evil Dead's Ash. A couple of weeks later, Bruce Campbell himself responds to the rumours with this meme which states in no uncertain terms that he's not in the game. This causes speculation to die down. for 3 weeks. New trailer drops for Shang Tsung and clearly teases Ash. Bruce Campbell even quote retweets the trailer saying that the game looks swell, which seems to be implying some sort of collaboration to a lot of people. So, Ash Williams is in the game. The very next week he appears in a talk show video called Bruce Campbell Says Ash Won't Be DLC in Mortal Kombat 11. He says it will be like Dead by Daylight where there's a couple lines as a cameo and not a DLC character, which doesn't really make sense because Ash Williams is a fully playable DLC character in Dead by Daylight, but I digress. Ash Williams is not in the game. Googling Ash Williams Mortal Kombat gave you an ad for the official MK site that listed Ash as a playable character, like here's his big reveal. So Ash Williams is in the game, right? Nope. Combat Pack trailer drops, no Ash. A pop-up for the Combat Pack reveals shows up in game. It lists the Joker as Ash Williams. Could Ash be in the game? Who knows anymore? Months pass. Emails sent out about the game to fans have Ash Williams and Army of Darkness copyright information on the footer. Whoa, so Ash is really coming. Bruce Campbell talks about contract disputes, doesn't really give a clear response, basically saying he doesn't know anything and that the Army of Darkness copyright holders haven't actually agreed to anything, so Ash is not in the game. 3 weeks later, again, very frequent unit of time measurement here, Aftermath DLC drops and he's not in it. Aftermath content drops and he's straight up just obliterated from the game files. So that means that there is definitively nothing to state that Ash Williams will ever be coming to Mortal Kombat 11. If only there's somehow more! Ed Boon speaks up about it, says he doesn't really have anything to share but wishes he could comment on it. Bruce Campbell says the jury's still out on it, cites legal mumbo jumbo. September 2020. Richard Epcar says Ash Williams will be in the game in a new DLC. Oh my god, it just keeps going! Ed Boon gets kinda tight about this and tweets that you'd be amazed how many people make statements without knowing the facts. Richard Epcar then clarifies that he spoke out of turn and he was wrong. Ed Boon deconfirms Ash Williams in a Twitter reply once again. The Combat Pack True trailer drops and there's no Ash Williams. NRS employees asked about this basically just redirect people to Campbell's statement about legal limbo and whatnot, and it stayed that way for the next, like, 5 years? So unless NRS wants to randomly just go back to MK11 and rectify this huge hole in the roster, I don't really think Ash Williams is coming to the game anytime soon. But now that I've made this video talking about it, I'm sure something that will cause Ash Williams to spontaneously appear in MK will just end up spontaneously happening. Maybe Combat Pack 3 for Mortal 1 Combat will happen after all? I don't know. This video's starting to drag a little. Cheers to Big X Cat, Penross, Phenomenal, and Typhool for their support on Patreon. This month's special feature is the audio for the Shenlong segment I was going to do for this video before deciding to do it in another video featuring that segment instead. Bye!